Hello, friends. I'm Andrea Morris, and welcome to another episode of Spill the Wine, our podcast, obviously about wine and demystifying wine so that you don't feel uncomfortable going to a winery because you aren't a sommelier. We are having an absolutely fantastic time today. I'm saying that in advance of having the fantastic time because we are at one of my favorite wineries, which is Hidden Bench. And I am so excited to talk with Alex Baines, who is the winemaker here. Hello, Alex.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I have been going to Hidden Bench for I don't know how many years, but how long have you been the winemaker here?
So I've been the winemaker here now for just over 3 years, but I've actually been a part of the Hidden Bench team for over almost 8.5 years now. So I joined in January of 2017 as the assistant winemaker.
So you're obviously not Canadian.
No, I'm not Canadian. So I'm actually originally from the UK. I grew up about an hour north of London, close to Cambridge. But I've been living abroad now for about 15 years. So I lived in Australia for 2 years. And then about 13 years ago, I moved to Niagara. Originally, I came to actually work harvest at Tar's Winery in Vineland. I then went on to study at Niagara College and I did the winemaking program here. And then once I graduated, I spent a year away and did a harvest in New Zealand, in Central Otago, and then also in California on the Sonoma coast. And then came back to Niagara in 2017.
That's quite the journey.
Yes.
It's interesting that you say you're from the UK because I lived there for 3.5 years myself, but I never thought of it as a huge winemaking or wine culture, except for when Beaujolais came out.
Yeah, definitely. And it's honestly not something that I thought I would get into. It's never an industry as a young kid that I was like, I want to grow up and be a winemaker. It wasn't actually until I moved to Australia that I got into the wine industry. So you can buy a working holiday visa there for 12 months. But in order to get your second year, you had to do 3 months regional work. So I actually went down to a town about 3 hours south of Perth and was looking for a job on an apple or an avocado farm. And it just so happened that I ended up working at a winery on a bottling line for a couple of months originally. And I needed this 3 months work. So I said to the winery, hey, like if you've got more work, I'll stick around. And they were like, yeah, we'll teach you how to, use a pump, do some wine work, drive a tractor, do some stuff in the vineyard. And that was 2011. And that was really where my love of wine came from. And it just sort of snowballed from there.
Do you have a favorite of all your wines?
A favorite wine?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say I am a big lover of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But I find myself drinking more and more Gamay recently. And it really just depends on kind of what I'm eating and what I'm having. I mean, being English, I also have a very soft spot for sparkling. So,
well, who doesn't? I mean, it's my favorite way to always start a tasting. And I just think that the thing I think about sparkling is that people always think it's only for special occasions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's definitely that idea of the wine, but I mean, it pairs so well with seafood, and the high acidity in the wine makes it a great food wine. So I think it's really a wine for all occasions.
Yeah. Now, when you were in Australia, was there a particular wine there that made you go like, oh, I really want to start making wine because I love this process? Or
So, I mean, I was quite young at the time and I was just sort of like finding my way in the world. And I think it was more just like kind of being outside and being in the vineyard. And then this idea of like taking something that's been grown in the ground and making it into kind of a finished product through, at the time in all these processes that I didn't fully understand, but I thought were very cool. So I think I was just more excited about that aspect, I think, of, growing something and making a product out of it.
Are you instrumental in the way the grapes are grown here on the winery?
So we actually have a vineyard team, our vineyard manager, Joel Williams, and his assistant, Bryce. So those guys kind of run and take care of the growing of the vineyards. I do go out in the summer and I'll help with the yield estimates and stuff like that. But those guys basically are, responsible for delivering, amazing fruit to the winery. And then our owner, Harold Teal, he likes to joke and tell me that, my job is sort of the last 10, 15% and, just not to mess up the good grapes that the guys brought in.
Now, and speaking of the grapes that are grown here, you guys are one of the wineries in the area that's organic, correct?
We are, yeah. So one of the things that makes us, or a couple of things that make us unique, one is that our organic grapes, but also that we are 100% estate. So we very much view ourselves as wine growers, and we're only making wine from the vineyards that we tend to and care for ourselves. So I think that's a big advantage for us. We're one of the few wineries now still doing that 100% estate model. But it gives us full control of every decision right from the beginning of the season, which we're at now, all the way through to the finished wine. So we can really make those important decisions to get the best out of our vineyards and make the best wines possible.
And we've talked to several wineries earlier on earlier episodes of the podcast that are organic wineries. But in case someone hasn't heard them and is just listening now, what does it mean when we say a winery is organic?
Yeah, so we actually started certifying or farming organically in 2009. So it's a 3-year transition process to get the wines and the vineyards certified. So I've been certified now since about 2012, 2013. So in the vineyard, it basically means that we don't use any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. And so the main difference with the sprays that we use, the organic certified sprays, is they are contact sprays. So they go onto the outside of the grape. They don't go into the vascular system of the vine. So when we get a rain, those sprays are washed off, basically. And then we would have to go back into the vineyard and reapply that spray. Whereas, sort of more conventional sprays, they are systemic. So they get into the vascular system of the vine and then go through the vine and ultimately end up in the fruit. So I think, because we don't have that ability to kind of spray the vines and then walk away for 7 to 10 days, there's a lot more care and attention to detail required for organic farming. And I think that allows us to really make the most of the nuances in the vineyard and produce the best fruit.
Does that affect the price of the wine then?
Yes, it certainly is more expensive to farm organically. There's a lot more hand labor involved as well. Right now, the guys are actually going through and doing the initial hand hoe for the season. So they're going through all of the 80 acres that we have and hand hoeing each of the individual rows. So, and our vines will get touched anywhere from sort of 14 to 16 times by a person throughout the season. So all that attention to detail and that care and that handwork, it does make it more expensive to farm, but we also believe it creates better wines and more authentic wines. And for us, that's our focus. And
also smaller lots as well, right?
Yes, yeah. So we do have like our estate series, which is a blend of all 3 of our vineyards. And then we do have single vineyard bottlings from different varietals as well. So we have 80 acres on the estate across 3 distinct vineyards. The Locust Lane Vineyard, which is the vineyard that the winery's on. We have our Felsek Vineyard, which is right across the road. And then we also have Rosamel Vineyard, which is about 6 kilometers east of the wine.
Great. And I have tasted these wines, like as I've said previously, and they are absolutely stunning.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. And but a lot of times people would probably, if they didn't know about the history of the organics of this place, might come in and be like, oh my God, that's an expensive bottle. But on the other hand, I think, aren't you worth it?
Absolutely. And I think when you look on a global scale, like one of Harold's mandates and one of the things he wanted to do when he started the winery is he wanted to produce wines that Canadians could serve with pride, against any other kind of international wines as well. So when you look at, say, our estate Pinot and Chardonnay, which are big sellers in the LCBO at $32 and $38, if you're looking at sort of village level Burgundy, you're going to be paying almost twice that price. So I do think the wines do give us great sort of price quality ratio. So they kind of over deliver for the price point that they are. So although there is a conception that Canadian wines are expensive, I think if you look at it on a global scale with some of these other regions now, the price is really going up and up. We actually do provide really, really great value.
Yeah, and I think that, I've always been saying, I've been saying recently that I feel like the bench is like our Napa. It's the quality of wines that are produced in this area are highly underrated. And I think that people need to stop bypassing the bench to go to Niagara on the lake and actually make the trip here and understand how, just looking at the wines that are poured in front of me, it's a beautiful sight. And it just makes me happy to come to just come sit outside here and taste these beautiful wines and to know that they're made in Canada.
Absolutely, yeah. And we have the wonderful benefit of the escarpment in this area too. The limestone in the soils, also the slope that we get from the escarpment. And I mean, the views from the vineyard and the winery here are pretty special too.
They are. And I know listener, if you come here and do a tasting, you don't just sit down and get the wine poured in there and walk away. It's a really detailed talk about what you're tasting, how it was farmed, how the grapes were picked. And it's a really educational and fun experience.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a couple of different options in the tasting room. We do our sort of estate tasting flight, if you like, which is a 40-minute sort of curated and educational tasting. We also have an experience that we call route to glass. So that part actually includes a tour of the vineyard and a bit of an explanation of how we do things. Also a walk through the winery, and then you finish with that estate tasting experience.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
They are, for sure.
And how far in advance do the people have to book something like that?
So it depends on availability, but you can basically go onto our website and we partner with TOC, and you're able to go through and book those experiences right on the website.
That sounds fantastic. So listener, take advantage of it. I'm sitting here almost drooling looking at these wines, so I feel like we should taste them.
Absolutely.
And of course, I talked earlier about starting with bubbly, and I guess we're going to do that.
Yeah, so sparkling is becoming kind of a more and more part of our portfolio. But we're going to taste our 2018 Natur blend. So this is a Chardonnay and Pinot Noir blend. We barrel ferment the base wine to kind of give texture and weight. And then this actually spends 5 years on lees in the bottle. So we wanted to try to create that kind of long lees aging, serious, sort of yeasty champagne style wine. So that's what we've done.
Now, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir seems like an interesting blend because most of the time when I think of bubbly, I think of like Chardonnay or Riesling, but the Pinot mixed in is really interesting.
Yeah, so it provides like a little bit of sort of red fruit character. Also gives the wine some structure as well. So we just find with those two varietals blended together, we get kind of a little bit more complexity in the wines. The other thing that we do is quite unique about our sparkling is it's a zero dosage. Or brut nature, if you like. So we're not adding any sugar or any dosage at the end of the process. And the reason for that is that we want, like terroir for us is super, super important. It's kind of the sort of foundation of all of our winemaking philosophies and our growing philosophies in the vineyard. So in order to express that unique terroir and have it unadulterated, if you like, we do no addition of dosage.
Nice. Well, it's got a lovely color. And you would think with the Pinot Noir that it would be a little pinkish, but obviously there's no skin contact with that.
Exactly, yeah. So everything we do at the winery actually is hand-picked. And so for the sparkling, they would be whole bunch pressed as well. And we actually hand sort all of our grapes. So for the whites and the rosés and the sparkling, we're sorting the individual bunches. And then for the reds, we actually go one step further and we will destem the fruit and we'll hand sort the individual berries as well.
That's quite the process. This is, I just had a quick sip of this and it's really, really beautiful. But I also noticed that it's not super chilled.
Yes, it's that might be to do with the fact that we sort of pulled it out of the fridge and brought it over to the winery. But I do think like you want your sparkling to be cold, yes, but at the same time, you want to be able to taste the aromatics and the flavors. And sometimes if it's too cold, you can kind of mute that a little bit. Yeah,
I was watching a little blurb on a reel on Instagram, and there was a guy talking about champagne, and he was like, big myth is to serve it really cold because that way you're not tasting the flavors. And I find that when it's slightly warmer, I can actually taste some of that Pinot in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it really is much more inviting.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's not in a flute, which I like too. Because sometimes I find in a flute, you're not really getting that whole taste because it's so narrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes it difficult to try to get kind of the aromas and the flavors out of the glass, right? So.
This is really, really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's we're very proud of our sparkling program, and I think, as I said before, coming from the UK, I've got a bit of a soft spot for sparkling, so I am glad that it's a part of our portfolio.
It's fantastic. And how much does this sell for?
That is a great question. I mean, it's the old famous line, never ask the winemaker the prices, right? But it's...
For you today, it's free. Thank you.
I believe it's just shy of $50 retail. So it's $48 or $49.
You know what? It's an app. And people think about, I'll buy a bottle of Dom Perignon and that's over $100. Well,
exactly. And as I said before, you've got kind of entry-level champagne that's, in the sort of $50 to $60 range that, maybe spend 1 year on lees, whereas this wine has spent 6 years on lees.
It's stunning. So, and it's got that little brioche kind of finish to it.
6 years on lees, you said?
That's a long time.
I've only heard about like 1 year.
So that was something for us. We've always been very patient with our wines, and I think that patience gets rewarded in sort of the quality of the wines. So it's a very serious, complex sparkling wine.
It's a beautiful, beautiful bubbly that I could just sit and relax, and eventually the whole bottle would be gone.
Exactly. Perfect like for a sunny day like today.
Exactly. And then sunny days, I always think of white wine, and that's why we have another one to taste.
Yeah, so the next one we have actually is our 2019 Romans Block Riesling. So this is really special because this actually comes from a block of Riesling planted in the early 70s. So some of the oldest vines in Niagara. And so this vineyard was originally planted by a gentleman whose name is Roman Produkovic. And so Harold, our owner of the winery, he acquired this vineyard in 2004. And so he actually came down to the region after trying a Chardonnay made from Niagara. And he wanted to visit the vineyard that wine was made from because he was just blown away by the quality of that wine. And that happened to be the Rosamel vineyard. So he then, was wanting to start a winery in Niagara, which obviously, became Hidden Bench. But before he did that, he went to Roman and he said, hey, I want to learn how to grow grapes. Can I work with you? Can we do something? So he did. He worked with Roman and sort of, helped him look after that and learn how to sort of run a vineyard and look after a vineyard. And in 2003, he purchased the Lukas Sluzar vineyard, which is the site where the winery is. And, and then in 2004, Roman was kind of ready to retire and was like going to hang up his hat. And he actually reached out to Harold and said, hey, like, do you want to, take over the stewardship of the vineyard? So, we named this Riesling Romans Block in his honor. But yeah, it's really, really a fantastic Riesling from very, very old vines. So it's a privilege to be able to work with that fruit.
That's fantastic. And does the older with the Riesling, the older the vines, does it really affect the taste a lot?
Yeah, so I find like as the vine gets older, the root system gets kind of bigger and deeper. So you really get that kind of mineral character from the limestone. The other thing too is as the vines get older as well, they start to produce less. And so they become more in balance. So although you're getting less fruit, you're getting sort of more concentration of flavor, more complex fruit. So it's every year it's really interesting to see how this wine develops. And yeah, it's a really great Riesling.
So small quantities, I would imagine as well, if it's an older vine. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, typically we make about 150 cases of this wine. And our house style for Riesling has always been quite dry. So the Romans Block is usually somewhere in the sort of 8 to 10 gram of RS. And, I think there's a common misconception of Riesling for people that it's very sweet. So I think people are always very pleasantly surprised when they try our Rieslings because they're like, wow, this is, really fresh, really well balanced and not what I expected. So.
Yeah, people always think that Riesling is going to be like super sweet. And it never, I've rarely found a sweet Riesling. Mm-hmm. Particularly in this area. Most of them are dry.
Absolutely, yeah. I think people are leaning more and more towards that style now, which is great.
It's got a nice citrus nose to it.
It does, yeah. Yeah, you get a lot of that kind of like concentrated citrus flavor from the older vines. And
wow.
Yeah, beautiful kind of minerality and acidity on the finish.
But it's so soft.
Yeah. And I think that's, something as well. This is a 2019, which is the current release in the store right now. And after a few years in bottle, I do find Riesling, it really sort of comes together and harmonizes and balances very nicely. So it's nice to have something with a little bit of age on it, I think, 5 or 6 years, but it really starts to get into its own at that point.
It's like a lemon chiffon pie.
Yeah.
Because it's got that beautiful, soft, lemony taste, but it's also just a tiny little bit of sweetness on the back of my tongue. Mm-hmm. But it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you.
People always think, what food would I pair this with? But I would think like I would pair this with nothing and just open the bottle and drink it.
Yeah, that's great. That's the best way to do it, I think.
Yeah, but what would you pair it with if you were going, if someone was interested in that?
That's a great question. I mean, I always love to do kind of Riesling with seafood. It's great with cheese as well. If you have a charcuterie board where you've got different meats and cheeses, I always find Riesling's one of those versatile wines that can kind of stand up to everything on a charcuterie plate.
Yeah. This is beautiful. Did you make this one?
So I would have been here. I would have been the assistant winemaker at the time. So yeah, I was definitely involved in the process. Mm. So, but the first vintage that I was here as winemaker would have been 2022.
Okay. We're going to get to one of those today?
We will, actually. The next one we're going to try is from that vintage.
Yay. Listener, I have to say you have to come here for this Riesling because it is absolutely stunning. It is one of the best Rieslings I've ever tasted.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Now we're going to go on to one of your wines.
Yeah, we are. So this is actually our Sauvignon Blanc Beton. So this is one of the newest additions to the lineup at Hidden Bench. The first year we made this was 2021. And so Beton means concrete. So this is actually a concrete fermented and aged Sauvignon Blanc.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so it's the concrete tanks were part of an extension we did at the winery. And they work really, really well for white wines. So we have 2 smaller concrete eggs downstairs in the winery that we've had now for about 10 years. And we were doing some experiments and some trials in those, and we were kind of really happy with the results. And then in 2021, we built the extension and got some sort of larger tulip-shaped concrete tanks. So they come from a manufacturer called Nicovello in northern Italy. We have 5 fermenters that hold about 4,500 litres, and then 2 smaller tanks that hold 2,600 litres. And that's what we use for the whites. So we actually do a Chardonnay and a Sauvignon Blanc. So this is the Sauvignon Blanc that we're going to taste. So this is fermented and aged in concrete for about 8 months on its lees. And it just gives you this great texture and great weight. It's softer than I think a lot of people expect Sauvignon Blanc to be, but still with those really kind of great aromatics. And I find one of the really cool things about concrete is it gives the wines like a salinity or a brininess to it. So, really kind of makes me instantly feel like I'm sitting by the ocean drinking white wine.
That's interesting because when you were talking about concrete, I was just thinking it was going to be like really icy and hard, because you think about that with concrete. Whereas when people talk about barrels, you talk about like how the barrel affects the taste. And then I'm thinking like, are different kinds of concrete going to affect the taste?
Yeah, so it's the cool thing about the concrete is you still get that weight and that texture, but it's without the oak flavor, if you like. So you don't get the toast or the vanilla. So I think for a lot of people, like, for the Chardonnay, for example, as well, a lot of people, one of the things they don't like about Chardonnay is the use of oak. So we found we wanted to make a serious unoaked Chardonnay. So we actually do that one for 18 months on lees, and you still get those kind of bready notes and yeasty notes as well as the texture, but it's just without the oak flavor.
But I think that people that say that about Chardonnay, that they don't like oak Chardonnay, I think that there's so many varieties of oak as well. It's like, do you not like American oak? Do you not like a French oak? Do you not like, a Canadian oak? There's so many varieties of oak that can affect the taste of that wine. And I think you just kind of have to broaden your taste and not be just a flat out, like, I hate oak Chardonnay.
I definitely would agree. I mean, there's so many different styles all the way from everything that's, very rich and very buttery to more restrained. And yeah, like I said, there's so many different styles. I think to say you don't like oak Chardonnay is too broad of a statement because it's a big spectrum. So.
I think you're also cutting yourself off from an experience that you might actually find, I like that one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Just sometimes when I do wine tastings with people, I'm like, I don't tell them it's oaked, and I pretend it's unoaked, and they're like, I love it. And then it's like, haha, it's oaked.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, for sure. And I think, like you said, it just depends on the wine and the style. And yeah, there's so many different factors, especially with Chardonnay.
So when you talk about the concrete and saying it came from Italy, so how long has that been used for winemaking? Because that's the first time I've heard of a concrete.
So concrete vessels were, I think, some of the first vessels used in winemaking way back. And I think in the last few years, they've been making kind of a bit of a resurgence, if you like. So I think, these guys have been making, it's a specific type of concrete from that area that is used in winemaking, and they've been doing it for hundreds of years. So it's it's definitely something I find now that's making a bit of a comeback. And I think it's part of people want fresh, approachable, kind of lighter styles of wines. People aren't aging wine as much as they used to, and I think concrete vessels are one way to achieve that. They're beautifully balanced, textured wines that can be enjoyed when they're young, and like I said, you get this kind of nice salinity and freshness to it as well.
But you could still age this wine though?
Again, you know what? This is only the second vintage we've made this wine. So, I mean, we're kind of discovering it as we go along. So, I mean, at this point, the 2021 is still tasting great. But, yeah, we don't know yet. I mean, it's definitely something where it's kind of geared towards, I would say, a younger consumption. But, yeah, I mean, they've still got great acidity and weight to the wine. So, I think they'll age. But, yeah, we'll find out.
It does kind of smell like the ocean, though.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because you said that.
Power of suggestion.
Yeah, the power of suggestion. But it does. I have this salty kind of wavy on the nose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do find that that's definitely a characteristic that we get from the concrete tanks and the white wines, which I really love.
And it really does have a little bit of saltiness to it. Mm-hmm. But it's so light. And the color of it is very light as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say, we've been well known for our Rieslings, our Pinot Noir, and our Chardonnay, but Sauvignon Blanc and Gamay seem to be, becoming more and more a part of our portfolio and a staple for us. And so, we're very lucky the fact that Rosemel is a very unique vineyard that's got a gently sloped vineyard, but 2 steeper slopes at the top and the bottom. So we don't get any cold air that sits in that vineyard in the winter. So for Sauvignon Blanc, which is quite a cold-sensitive variety, usually in Niagara, you're lucky if you can get 20 years out of a block of Sauvignon Blanc. But site selection is super, super important. So, we've got some Sauvignon Blanc vines that have been planted in 1990 and still going strong. So to have vines now that are over 30 years old, I think, is one of the things that makes our Sauvignon Blanc products really unique.
Because they have that aged vine.
Exactly, yeah.
And the second sip, I can taste more minerality in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like very similar to the Romans block, like you really do get a lot of that kind of mineral limestone character from the Rosemont vineyard.
But it's fun. It like I've never tasted a Sauvignon Blanc where I had that saltiness to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well done, Alex.
Well, thank you very much. It's different, right? Like it's uniquely Ontario, which is what I love about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's great about it too. It's like you're not going to get this in Napa, you're not going to get it, anywhere else. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder what this would be like chilled. I bet you would lose some of that saltiness.
Yeah, I think again with anything that's like overly cold or very cold when you serve it, like it does just tend to kind of shut the.
That's a really really fun Sauvignon Blanc.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and again, it's like the first time I've ever tasted a wine that was made aged in concrete.
Yeah, no, it is definitely quite unique. So we've really been enjoying working with those tanks.
Now, is the Chardonnay the same?
So this is actually, we do have the Chardonnay Beton product. We also do our estate Chardonnay, which is a blend of all 3 vineyards, but this is actually one of our single vineyard Chardonnays. So this is from the Felsig vineyard. So the vineyard that's just right across the road from the winery. I would say the Felsig vineyard, it's about 35 acres in total. This particular Chardonnay comes from a block planted in 1992. About 30 years old for the 2021 vintage. So this is a barrel fermented Chardonnay. So again, everything's hand-picked, hand-sorted, whole bunch pressed. We handle the fruit very, very gently. Our goal is always to try to get as much of the terroir and the character from the vineyard into the finished wine. We don't add any yeast, like it's spontaneously fermented, if you like. We use the yeast that comes in from the vineyard. We're using, as you said, a very judicious amount of new oak. We use about 18% new, and we use all French oak here at the winery. And then this is aged in barrel for about 16 months before getting bottled. But the Felsig vineyard, it's really, really unique. In the 35 acres of the vineyard, there's about 6 or 7 different soil types. And we have the most active limestone in our Felsig vineyard as well. So it's about 6 or 7%. So again, you really get this kind of nice graphite character, I find, that comes through in the Chardonnay and also in the Pinot Noir as well. And the Felsig vineyard, it's always very kind of opulent and fruit-forward in its youth, which is great. Compared to, our Tête Cuvée is the other single vineyard Chardonnay that we do. That one is a little more kind of stony and takes a few years to kind of open up and show itself.
So you'd have to open up, basically save that glass, save that bottle, and let it age a bit.
Exactly, yeah. I always tell people you can kind of drink the Felsig Chardonnay while you're waiting on the Tête Cuvée. And, after sort of 3 years in bottle, it really starts to kind of open up and show some more layers.
Do you have a favorite wine to make?
That's a tough question because, I enjoy different aspects of all the different wines we make. But, yeah, I would say, I've always been a big fan of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Whenever I traveled abroad, I tried to work, 1, with organic producers, but 2, with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir producers. So I do think that I've got a particular soft spot for our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir program. And, I love working with barrels and, delving into our barrel program and kind of tailoring the right barrels with the right blocks from each vineyard. And I think that's been a big part of my journey here and really kind of refining the choices that we're making in the winery, as I said, to best sort of showcase the terroir and the origins of the vineyards.
And I imagine that with the barrel thing, it's kind of like, it has to be somewhat instinctive because if you're going to buy barrels, you have to kind of know that that's going to be what you want because there's so many different varieties of them and how long are you going to age it? And is it the new barrel? Do you want to just have it in there for a short period of time or do you want an older barrel or, and anyone that's new to wine might not understand that, but because I've done so many episodes of this podcast and talked to so many winemakers, they always talk about the effects that the age of the barrel and where the barrel's from actually have on the taste of the wine.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's one of the things, like, over time, we've been able to explore sort of different pairings with different barrels and parts of our vineyard and really try to, work with those different blocks and understand what they need and, eventually make the best pairing between the barrel and the block. And I think, again, that's one of the advantages of being, a wine grower, if you like, and being 100% estate is that we've now been working with the same pieces of land for 20 years. So we're really, really able to understand them and get the most out of them and therefore, make the best wines we can.
Right. So the barrels and the concrete are just the things that actually steer those grapes in a different direction.
Exactly, yeah. It's, we're trying to, as well as, so between the 80 odd acres we have in the vineyard, we're probably split into 60 different sub-blocks, I would say, which is all, different varietals and different clones and different rootstocks and different vine age. And, we do the same thing in the winery where we have, we use 228 litre barrels, we use 500 litre barrels, we use stainless steel, we use oak, we use concrete. And really, my job is to try to take all these components and tie them together in a way that makes, the best wines and the most complex wines. So.
That sounds like a hard job, but fun.
Artfully applied science, if you like.
The grape chemist, right? This has a really beautiful nose on it too.
Yeah, it's very, very distinctive, I find, the Felsig vineyard every year. So.
There's something different about it, but it's citrusy, but there's another component.
Yeah, you almost get it's kind of a little bit of tropical fruit that comes out as well.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like pineapple.
Exactly, yeah. We do find that every year, like the Felsig, Chardonnay tends to be the one that sort of jumps out of the glass. It's got great intensity and yeah, it's a really, really great vineyard. And again, I think, one of the great things about being part of the team at Hidden Bench is just being able to work with these super cool pieces of land. So.
I think that's one of the cool things about grapes too, though, is like they never taste just like a grape.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there's so many other influences that can affect the taste. And yeah, it's really interesting to see, even with the Lukas Sluzar vineyard and the Felsig vineyard, they're right across the road from each other, but they're so different. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes the bench area unique as well is, it's glacial till is the soil type here. So it's very, very mixed. So, we go from the eastern part of the Felsig vineyard, which is sort of predominantly limestone. And as you move across and come west and go up the hill to the Lukas Lane, you're getting more and more clay as you go to the top of the hill. So
I think that's, for me, I don't know about you, listener, but for me, it's really fun to hear about that because when you know how much the land affects the taste of something, I think nobody talks about that like orange juice, like, oh, when your orange juice was planted in this field and the oranges taste different. But with grapes, it really does have that effect.
Absolutely, yeah. They're very much draw characteristics from where they're grown.
Now, this is something I've always wondered, how do you taste the grape before you start making wine and go like, I wonder, like, this is what direction I want to put it in and these are the barrels I want to put it in?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, at harvest time, when it comes down to picking decisions, I'm out in the vineyard every day, tasting the fruit. We're kind of, obviously running analysis as well, running sugar and acids just to make sure the composition of the grapes where we want it to be. But yeah, I go out in the vineyard every day. I'm tasting the fruit and making picking decisions. And, if the flavor is not there in the grape at that time, then it won't be there in the finished wine. So, some days we'll say, okay, it's not quite ready. Let's leave it a few more days. I'll come back to that particular block in 2 or 3 days. And it's amazing how much the flavors can change in a short period of time at harvest. And I think, again, as I said, being 100% estate, being a small team here at Hidden Bench, like myself, Joel Williams, our vineyard manager, and Harold Teal, our owner, the three of us will get together at harvest and we can really pick and choose and make the decisions to get the most out of the vineyards and the fruit and make the best wines. And being completely estate allows us to do that. We're not at the mercy of any outside factors. And I think that's a really important sort of key point to making premium terroir-driven wines.
So when you, like let's say with the Chardonnay, how do you decide which Chardonnay you're going to put in the concrete and which is going to be oaked?
So usually, for the concrete, there's certain blocks that we work with every year that, older blocks, they'll go into single vineyards and things like that. Typically for the Chardonnay Beton, we're looking at maybe something that's maybe a little bit more aromatic, a little bit more fruit forward. That's going to be consumed younger. And there's, like I said, other older portions of the vineyard that we use for the single vineyards. And again, working with the same plots of land for, 20 years now, it's like we're we've really been able to see how each block develops and what the characteristics are. And that really gives us a great idea of where that wine's going to end up. But for the most part, we try to vinify everything as separately as possible and then make those decisions later on down the line. So try to give ourselves as many options as we can. And then we'll actually go through, for example, when we're blending the Felsic Chardonnay, we'll go through and we'll taste every single barrel from the Felsic vineyard. And, we do that as a team. So, myself, Joel, Harold, Matt, our operations manager, who you met earlier on, we'll all sit down and we'll taste together. And then we'll pick the best barrels from the Felsic vineyard, if you like, to make our single vineyard wine.
That's quite the process, but it's wonderful to hear that because it really makes you appreciate what the price of a wine is. Because it's not just you pick the grapes, put them in a barrel, and then put it in a bottle. There's so much thought and so much process that goes into it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big process. There's a lot of attention to detail. There's a lot of little nuances, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into a finished wine.
Yeah, this is a beautiful product, though. This Chardonnay is lovely.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I really like it. It's ironic. I always find that wines on the other side of King Street are very soft because of the lake bed. But this, for being on the other side, is really, really soft as well. It's like a really warm, inviting Chardonnay, almost like a little blanket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the balance is really important for us in the wines, and I think it really is looking showing very well at the moment.
Yeah, my little blanket Chardonnay right there.
There you go. And this was it was the Felsic Vineyard Chardonnay that actually the 2018 vintage won a Best in Show at the Decanter Awards a few years ago.
Wow.
So this particular wine and vineyard has got quite a following now because it's, not only do we get like kind of local acclaim, but also kind of international acclaim as well, which is great.
That's great. I love that there are specific, I don't know why I can't say that word today, specific vineyards in this area, like the Hank Vineyard that's known for Pinot Noir. And then that people actually know from that taste.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have
take a moment. I think we all
have an amber alert. Yeah. But it's going to do it again. Yeah. Sorry.
We'll pause again.
All right. So now we're going to be moving from whites to some reds.
Absolutely, yeah. So the first one we're going to taste is our 2021 Estate Gamay. So Gamay is actually the newest variety for us. We started making this in 2019. It's something that I think the region does very, very well. And there's more and more of it now around. For us, it was a bit of a journey to get to the first one because, again, we're 100% estate. So, we wanted to obviously keep that mandate. And so we weren't able just to go out and buy Gamay fruit to bring in to make a Gamay. So Harold, who went out, he found a piece of land because we didn't have any space on the vineyards that we already had planted. So he found a piece of land in the Lincoln Lakeshore appellation, got a long-term lease on that. And so that was in 2013. We left it fallow for 3 years. The vines were then planted in 2016. And then we made our first wine in 2019.
Wow.
So, it's a several-year process when you're 100% estate in order to get to a finished wine. And it's been a really interesting kind of learning curve. It's a great variety to work with. I love drinking Gamay. Part of the reason that we got the concrete tanks as well were to use in our Gamay program. So it's a really, I think, going to be a great red for Ontario going forward. And I know there's a lot of other producers now, Thomas Batchelder, Malavoie, more and more people are starting to see that. And I think celebrate Gamay, which is great. Yeah,
and it's funny because for a long time, I had this grudge against Gamay, and I don't know what it was. I was just like, I always thought of it as like a gateway wine, and it was like, well, I'm not a wine beginner anymore, so I don't need to bother with Gamay. But now I really appreciate the complexity of it. And, because I always loved Beaujolais when I lived in the UK. So when I'm like, oh, it's basically Beaujolais with a different name.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, we definitely try to make it, I would say, in a more kind of serious, age-worthy style, like more of a cru Beaujolais style as opposed to the sort of Beaujolais Nouveau. And yeah, we've got a newer planting now in our Locust Lane vineyard that we've been taking fruit from now for 2 years. So it's definitely a grape that we're trying to explore more about and learn more about. But it's I like it. It's a fun, very easy drinking kind of red, refreshing wine. But at the same time, it can be complex and nuanced and structured as well.
Yeah, and it can just be like if you're a white wine drinker, Gamay is a really good start to red.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, in the summer, I love to serve, and drink Gamay chilled as well.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
You beat me to it.
Absolutely. Like I think it's one of those red wines, that you can, with a little bit of a chill on it, it's great in the sun.
But not super chilled, just a little.
Yeah, just, I usually put mine in the fridge for 20 minutes, something like that. Just put a little bit of a chill. You don't want it cold by any means, but just a little bit of chill really I find helps to kind of just bring out some of the fruit and, really kind of hold the palate together. And
Yeah, and just enjoy.
Exactly. Our estate Gamay, it's $29.95. So I mean, for a certified organic, kind of estate Gamay, I think it's a really great price too.
I think that, what, all of your wines I find have this really beautiful kind of softness to them as well. And I think that might have something to do with the organic. There's just not that, there's no harshness to any of your wines. They're just so warm and inviting.
Absolutely. And I think, we do crop our vineyards quite low as well in order to get sort of full physiological ripeness of the grapes. And I find that really kind of, softens the tannins, resolves the tannins. And I think as well, like one of the things that drew me to the Niagara region and, I love the wines here was just the elegance and the finesse that the wines here have. And I think that comes from, our cool climate, but also the limestone that we have in the soil as well. And I think for me, like I really want to embrace and celebrate that. So I'm always looking to make, wines that are elegant and finessed and light. So.
Yeah, and I think elegant was the word I was looking for because this is very, I just feel like, like I should have an evening gown on and be like, oh, it's so elegant but also inviting.
Absolutely.
Like an evening gown wearing tennis shoes.
There you go. That's it, right? So
the best of both worlds,
that's
right?
It. Exactly, yeah. Well, it's always great to hear when people enjoy the wines. I mean, that's, we spend so much of our sort of time in life making them and steering them towards the bottle. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing it for people to enjoy. So it's always great to hear when people do.
Well, I do. And I'm a big fan of your winery. So it's really a treat to sit here and talk with you about this too, because like, honestly, I've never had this Riesling before and it's so good.
Well, it's great. I'm glad to hear. And yeah, like some of the single vineyards and stuff, we only pour them at the winery. So people would definitely have to come by the winery in order to get those and experience those.
Yeah, no, when I remember the first time I came here, I was a big fan of your rosé, and which is also spectacular. We're not tasting that today, listener, but it's well worth coming for. But your Pinot was always my go-to because it's so good.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you very much. It's definitely one of the wines that we, have been known for a very long time. So the last one we're going to taste today is our 2022 Estate Pinot Noir. So the 2022 was quite a warm vintage in Niagara, so you can kind of see it's got a bit of a darker red color to it.
Yeah.
This is a blend of all three of our vineyards. And as I was saying earlier on, with all of our reds, it's handpicked, whole bunch sorted, destemmed, and then we actually hand sort the individual berries as well. So we're really just kind of taking the time and the care to make sure that only the best fruit is making it into the tanks. So to give kind of, the best and most complex wine. So.
And Pinot is with the limestone you were talking about in this area. It's perfect for that, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And we have a fantastic climate for it as well. And, I really do think that the organic farming is a way to really get the most out of a Pinot grape. Like Pinot needs care, needs attention. It's called the heartbreak grape because I think if you neglect it, then it definitely punishes you. It really needs to be taken care of, and I think it shows in the finished wine. So our estate Pinot, it's one of the LCBO vintage essentials as well.
Wow.
So along with our estate Chardonnay, and so both those are available, continuously in the LCBO, and so those are two of I would say are like flagship wines if you like. So
lovely nose on that.
Yeah, it's got really kind of like nice dark red fruit. You get nice kind of a savory character to it as well. And one of the things I love about our Pinots is they have this sort of earthy character on the palate as well.
I was going to say, yeah, it's like it is very earthy.
Yeah, and you get those kind of graphite notes and stuff too that come through from the vineyards. And this is a really great sort of holistic view of our whole estate, if you like, just because, like I said, it is a blend of all three of the vineyards.
It's really nice. And I'm a big Pinot fan, so as most listeners would know by now. Which is great that I live out here now because this area is abundant in fantastic Pinot Noirs.
Absolutely, yeah. You'd have a lot of great wines right in your neighborhood. So.
Exactly, yeah. And I can walk to a lot of them as well. So.
Oh, there you go, even better.
Do you put Pinot in oak, or what is this one barreled in?
Yeah, so we would ferment the Pinot in a mixture of kind of the large oak fermenters and stainless steel fermenters that you saw in the winery earlier on. And then once they've been on skins, I would say for kind of between 20 and 25 days, we'll actually drain the free runoff by gravity, and then we'll dig the rest of the skins out. And we have kind of a traditional basket press that we use for the reds. So a very gentle way of sort of pressing off the skins and getting the rest of the juice out. They then go down to barrel for about 10 months. And, again, in the Pinot, we're using, a little bit more new oak than the Chardonnay, but it's still a very sort of judicious amount, sort of around 20, 22%. And again, I never want any one component to dominate the wines. I'm looking to kind of, bring all those components together in balance and have them kind of work with each other. And then after about 10 months in oak, that's when we kind of make our selections for the blend. So again, as I said, we'll go through, we'll taste every single barrel like we do with the Chardonnay to make our selections for our single vineyard Pinots. And then the balance is kind of blended together to make our estate. And then, so we also, again, patience is a big thing for us. So we do believe that, if you can not rush the wines to bottle, but if you have the ability to wait and hold them in the cellar, it does definitely benefits the wine. So the next step for us would be to take all those individual barrels, we'll put the blend into a tank, and then we'll actually hold the blend in a tank for about 8 months, just so all those individual components can kind of come together and meld together and just sort of complete and balance themselves out before we put them into bottle. So, and then even when the wine goes into bottle, we usually hold on to the wines for at least a year before they get released.
Wow.
Again, just so they can sort of really kind of come together in the bottle and be a much more sort of harmonious wine. And I think that patience of holding those wines back before we release them really does make a difference.
So it's interesting. I always, when you have, if you ever were a listener thinking about having a winery and getting into this business, patience is a virtue.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can't just plant grapes and go next year I'm going to make wine. They have to stay on the vine for a bit. And
for sure, yeah. I mean, usually depending on the seasons, you might be able to get a half crop in the third year, but typically it's 4 years before your first full crop. And then, depending on the wine, that wine can be anywhere from 6 months to 2 years after harvest before it's bottled and ready to go. So wow. It's a long-term game for sure.
So you kind of have to have this vision in your head of what this is going to end up as when you first start making the wine.
Absolutely, yeah. Because even in the vineyard, there's different choices you can make if the wine's being used for sparkling or for table wine. And so, yeah, you really do have to kind of think about that right from the get-go.
Have you ever gotten to a point where you're tasting the wine as it's aging in the barrel and you're like, oh, this is not doing what I want it to do?
You know what? Fortunately, I've been lucky enough to not have that problem. So it's
that would have been a great story. Damn
touch wood that we don't have that problem. But yeah, I think as winemakers, I think a lot of people talk about being sort of non-intervention and hands off, and and very much we do want to get as much of the vineyard character into the finished wine. So we're trying to be as as least intrusive as we can. But what I like to tell people is that we work very hard to appear invisible. Because I think that gives a better story of kind of what we're doing in the winery. Because we're tasting, we're checking, we're running analysis in the lab, and we're making sure that we can try to, these wines are being guided in the direction that we want. So although we may, in an ideal world, we don't have to do anything to kind of intervene, we've got to make sure that everything's going the way it should. So there is a lot of work in the background that I think, people don't necessarily see. And so, yeah, for me, I always think, working hard to appear invisible is a bit more of a truer story than sort of hands off and non-intervention.
It's like hidden winemaker.
Well, exactly. Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
But Alex, you make some stunning wines.
Well, thank you very much.
They're absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And I would basically love to have all these in my cellar.
Perfect.
Which they wouldn't stay long in there, but particularly this Riesling, which I'm in love with.
Oh, I'm super glad.
So good. And that Sauvignon Blanc. That's the first one I've ever had in a concrete, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's definitely a very, very unique expression.
It's worth coming here just to taste that.
Absolutely.
Just to go here's something new that I've never had before, and this is so cool.
For sure.
Is there a wine that you're that you have coming up that you're really excited about?
That's a great question. I mean, we just did our big spring bottling, so the 2024 rosés have just been bottled and released. I mean, that's always a super exciting time. And we do our Locust Lane rosé every year, which is kind of a direct-to-press Pinot Noir rosé, but we always have about 5% Viognier in that, which I think makes it really, really unique. Really boosts the aromatics, gives it nice tropical fruit. So we make that rosé every year. And then this year, we also have our Nocturne rosé, which we only make in some years. So that's actually a darker style rosé, made using the Sanier method. So we'll draw juice out of the red fermenters in order to concentrate the red wines after they've been on skins for sort of 12 to 18 hours. But it also gives us this really kind of very intensely berry, darker colored sort of rosé juice to work with. And this year, that one's a blend of Malbec, Gamay, and Pinot Noir. So it's a really, really cool, unique rosé. And the other thing, that I love about our rosés too is they're all barrel fermented as well and aged in barrel for about 5 months. So we use all neutral oak in the rosés because we're not looking for that new oak character. But it just gives those wines, really great body and texture at a lower sort of alcohol of, about 12%. So I find a lot more and more rosés now from, Provence and Tavel and other New World regions as well are sort of pushing 13.5%, 14% alcohol. So for us to still be able to produce, 12% alcohol wines, but with that same texture and body, I think is really special.
Oh, I'm looking forward to coming back and tasting that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because your rosés have always been one of my favorites.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, it's definitely a very exciting time every year when we release the rosés. So.
Yeah, party time.
Exactly, yeah. Summer's coming. So.
I know, right? That's when I know summer's almost here when the rosés coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. Well, Alex, that has been such a pleasure to speak with you about these wines today because, like I said, I've been enjoying them for years. But it's really nice to meet you and to hear your insight and to also, like I said, taste a concrete wine, which is so cool.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. So thank you very much for having me on.
Well, you know what? Anytime. And you know what? We've been known to do double visits, so you never know.
Absolutely.
But listener, be sure to visit our show notes and you can have a recap on all the wines that we tasted today and along with website info for Hidden Bench so you can come here and do your own tasting. And don't forget to like and follow Spill the Wine on Facebook, which is Spill the Wine Podcast, and on Instagram, which is Spill the Wine _podcast. And big news, we've got our website coming up, which I think it will be available by the time you are hearing this podcast. It's spillthewine.ca. And we will have detailed information about all, like a page for each one of the wineries that we visited. You can see tons of photos and get all kinds of information, and it's going to be a great place to go to. In the meantime, you can also make sure that if you have any questions or suggestions, you can give us send us an email at, we got two choices, podcastspillthewine@gmail.com or contacts@spillthewine.ca. I think that's it.
I think it's that.
I think that's We'll confirm that later, but you know what? And
just go to the website.
Yeah, just go to the website. Go to and you'll find a way to contact us there. Spillthewine.ca. We are so happy to have had this experience with you, Alex. It has been such a pleasure. And listeners, be sure to like and follow us and tell your friends because we need to grow our audience. And in the meantime, we're going to say cheers and be sure to listen to the next episode.